This is Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time, episode number 32. We'll review the last couple of episodes, defragging your friends and defragging your house, and if that wasn't enough for you, and you still need a little bit of defragging, then we're going to talk about defragging your life in this third part of our defragging series, Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time. Welcome back to another episode of Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time. I'm your host, Michael Blackston. If you're hearing the sound of a rumble under my voice, that's just the sound of the road as I drive all over the Southeast on my commute to work. You're sitting in the passenger seat alongside me, and we're going to learn to live life 1 mile at a time. And this episode is part 3 of our defragging series, and it's called Defragging Your Life. In the first and second episodes of this series, we talked about first defragging your friends, and then talked about defragging your house. I mentioned how sometimes life can get complicated when you have too much going on in the way of friends. Sometimes that can complicate things because we assign the title of friendship to situations where it's maybe more like acquaintances. And sometimes we can allow those kinds of relationships to sort of get in the way of the things that are a little more important in life. I wasn't saying that friends didn't have importance in your life, but at the same time, I talked about having a set of priorities as to who were your real, true, honest friends and who were actually more like acquaintances. We talked about social media, we talked about friends in the workplace, we talked about all sorts of things in that way of thinking. And then we talked about defragging your house, which may seem like kind of a simple idea. You know, why would really, aren't we talking more of psychological stuff? But getting a handle on your house is actually important because it's the place you live. It's the place you come back to every day after a long day's work or even a long day's play. However your life turns out, you come home and you spend the rest of your time in the place that you call home. So having a sense of defragmenting there will kind of help you keep the stress off. And we talked about having too much clutter. I talked about how my house has too much clutter and what I and my wife were doing to get rid of it. And if you want to listen to those episodes, it's episodes 30 and 31. This is episode 32, so we're going to talk about a little more of a broad spectrum as far as defragging your life. And before I get started there, I want to once more, in case this is the first time you're listening to an episode in this series, explain what I mean by defragging. If you remember having the old computer process where your computer started slowing down because the systems that work within the computer would get fragmented, and it would cause it to have to overthink and overcalculate and go and pick out little pieces here and there in order to make one system work. So you would hit the defrag button. Well, there's actually not a defrag button on your keyboard, but you would go into the system and hit defrag. And what it would do is it would take those systems that were all messed up like puzzle pieces, and it would put them back together in something that had some sort of order that the computer could look at it at one time. Instead of having to go pick it out piece by piece, it would take the fragments and put them back together in something that made sense for the computer, and it would run better. That's what the idea of defragging your life in this episode is going to be all about. Because like I said, we've talked about your friends, we've talked about your home, but what about if you've done that and it's just not enough? There's more stress in your life than just clutter at your house and clutter on your Facebook page. What if your life is more complicated than that and you need to defrag your entire life? Well, I've broken that down into 5 sections. Your family, your hobbies, your projects, your health, and your mind. So in this first one, I want to talk about defragging your family, and it might be the hardest one of the 5. That's why I put it at the top, because I'm not sure how much time I want to spend on each one of these, but family deserves a lot of attention on this because it can be, like I said, one of the hardest things to do. However close you are with your family will depend on how hard it is to defrag portions of your family unit, whatever that looks like. I personally have a very close relationship with my mother's side of the family. My father's side of the family, not so much. I have people that I am closer to in that section of my family. But because my mom and dad separated and divorced when I was young, it was kind of fragmented. And while there's really no way to defrag that I can see, other than taking my time and making sure that I spend enough with both sides, really, there's not that many opportunities available for my father's side. But my mother's side, I'm very, very close to the point that at least once a week, we're spending several hours with the extended family, my mom and my mom's sisters and their families. We all get together at the end of the week on Sunday, or beginning of the week, however you look at it, and we have a time of fellowship. We have done that ever since I was born. For 40-something years, we have gotten together on Sundays, all of us, and that can get complicated at times. Although I'm very close to everybody, there have been times in my life when I've had to step back and say, I'm dismissing myself from a little bit of this chaos. I am, and my wife is too, an introvert. And when you have a lot of people together at one time and there's no controlled situation, it eats up your internal battery quickly. And before long, you find yourself unable to handle the chaos, and you need a recharge. The way my wife does that is she likes to take a nap. She'll like to find a dark room and lay down for a couple of hours and take a nap and recharge her batteries where nobody bothers her. I, on the other hand, like to get busy with a project or a hobby all by myself with nobody else around. That's just the way of the introvert. But sometimes I need it to be further than that with my family. Sometimes I need to step back and say there's too much going on. I'm hearing too much drama from every little single unit surrounding me. There's too much going on, and I don't want to be a part of it. I love you, and I love being around you. I love spending this time with you, but I can't be a part of this drama. I can't be a part of this drama. I can't be a part of this drama. I have to separate myself from that. I have to defrag and make things simpler. So it may be that in your family, if you have a problem with needing to defrag your family, if things get too complicated and too overwhelming for you sometimes when trying to deal with it, you might need to step back. And there might be certain members of your family that take a little too much of the charge out of your battery, that you need to specifically say, I can't be around this person very long. Or I need to take a break from this person. I love you, but I'm taking a break. And you don't have to tell them. It would hurt their feelings, honestly, if you told them that, unless they're harming you and it needs to happen. There are times in people's lives where they need to actually take a stand or make a statement and say, what's going on in our family relationship between the two of us is not healthy, it's harming me, and I got to get out of it, either for a while or permanently. You decide which situation that is, what steps need to be taken to get you out of that situation and to defrag your life in the form of your family unit. Next, let's talk about your hobbies. Why might you need to defrag your hobbies? Especially if you're an introvert like I am, and hobbies are one of the ways that you recharge your batteries. Well, it's just that if you're like I am, you can get overwhelmed with projects and hobbies. And I'm not going to go too far into this one simply because I've spent a lot of time in the Road Noise podcast talking about priorities and the projects and hobbies and things that you do and how to finish what you've started. So I've said a lot about that in past episodes, and if you're interested in further conversation on that, go ahead and look at some of the past episodes. You look at the titles and you'll figure out which ones I'm talking about. But I will mention it enough to be a category in this list of 5 categories here. Hobbies are easy to overwhelm you because they seem to be something that you can give them or take them. But if we're honest with ourselves, our hobbies are the things we love to do. And so once we've decided to get involved with one of them, we hate to shut them down. It saddens us to feel like, okay, I'm going to stop doing something that I really enjoy doing. But at times, you can get involved with too much at one time, things that you enjoy doing, to the point that you don't realize that that's causing you some stress. It can cause stress on your financial situation, your pocketbook, because you're buying materials or whatever costs money, because everything nowadays costs money. The time that you spend with your family, that you need to be spending with your family, if you're a husband or a wife, a father or a mother. All kinds of situations that you can get into that are stressing you out because you've got too many hobbies. So maybe you ought to defrag a little bit by thinking about, what am I too involved with? Am I constantly running around doing something, putting deadlines on myself that I'm calling a hobby that really isn't a hobby because I'm only spending a fragment of time, a little bit at a time on it, so really nothing gets done to completion, and it's stressing me out. Maybe you need to defrag your hobbies a little bit to help defrag your life. Next, I want to talk about projects, and these are things like around the house projects. If you're a husband, especially, if you're the fix-it guy, things that need to get done and they're all sitting on top of you. There's a huge laundry list of things, and maybe it's your laundry that is on top of you that's stressing you out, and you need to defrag that. Well, Michael, I need to get that done. Those are things that need to get done. And you're right. The thing is, you can only do one thing at a time. There's only one of you. So defragging your projects really is kind of a priorities type thing anyway. If it comes to that, what you need to think about is, what do I really need to get done first? And what can wait? And if it can wait, stop worrying about it. There are a million things that you're going to need to get done in your life. And they need to be done. But you can do one at a time. And that's all you can do. And you can only do them when you have the time to do them. So put them in order of priority. Get them done when you can do them. Spend the proper amount of time on doing them. But at the same time, don't worry about them. Get to them when you can get to them. And don't let it stress you out. Don't let it become little bits and pieces of things that needle you constantly. Defragging your health. This can be a biggie because a lot of people don't realize the mental strain bad health can have on them. But at the same time, a lot of people don't realize the mental strain good health can have on them. And what I mean by that is really kind of in the way that you handle your diet and exercise. I need to lose a little bit of weight. Not a whole lot. I've been doing really well. However, when I do decide that I'm going to focus on losing, for instance, the last 20 pounds that I would like to lose, a lot of times I go overboard. It becomes all-consuming. And I start saying, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. And there are a million different things in front of me that I want to do in order to aid my health and exercise, my diet plan. And I get overwhelmed because it's just a bunch of fragmented things. Simplify your diet and exercise. Just like your projects, when you can only do one thing at a time, if you need to lose some weight, you're only going to lose that weight 1 pound or half a pound at a time. Don't try to lose 5 pounds this week. simplify it to 1 pound at a time, because that's how your body is going to act. You're not going to change it, and by trying to, you're going to overwhelm yourself. So defrag a little bit when you think of the way that you diet. If you need to make a whole lot of changes in your diet and it overwhelms you to think that I don't want to quit everything at once, and you've been doing everything for 30 years wrong, you built up those habits over time, and it's going to take time to break them. So you need to give yourself the time to defrag your diet and health. Decide to do one exercise every day. For me, I've decided I'm going to do push-ups every day. Now, I'm going to do my walking and stuff like I want to do, but I find that when it comes to my 5 miles a day that I like to walk, right now I've been so busy, I don't have the time to put in 5 miles a day. I want to, but this is the end of my son's school year. It seems like every day there's some other event I've got to go to with him. He's in middle school, and he's in 6th grade. He's going to 7th grade next year, and he's had a chorus concert and a band concert, and every little thing like that. It seems like there's always something I'm having to do. There are a whole bunch of weddings from friends of mine that I'm having to either attend or even be a part of, go by something for a shower we're going to or something. It's nonstop, and I'm having a hard time finding an hour and a half or 2 hours to put in a 5-mile walk. But what I can do is every now and then, when I get up in the morning or when I get home, maybe once an hour at those times when it's convenient, I can drop and do 15. Right now, I'm only able to do 15 true push-ups. I could do 100 of them wrong, but I can do 15 slow and right to where I can feel every muscle in my body as I do it being worked. And I've decided that I'm going to work myself up right now just with push-ups. And as it goes along, and as my body starts getting a little stronger and I get a little lighter and stuff like that, and I start being able to add stuff to it, I can add to it as I go a little at a time. But I don't have to say, okay, Michael, I've got to do 100 push-ups today, 100 crunches today, and 100 whatever else at 5 miles. That becomes too much. It's too fragmented, it's too much, and it overwhelms, and we burn out. Avoid the burnout with your health and your diet by not putting too much on yourself. Do one little thing at a time. You need to start drinking water? Start drinking water, but don't tell yourself you have to drink 2 gallons of water a day. Just get a bottle of water and try to keep it with you. And if that amounts to 1 bottle of water or 2 bottles of water, fine, but you're sipping on that all day. Simplify things. Defrag your health. And lastly, defrag your mind. A lot of what I've just mentioned in the previous 4 is kind of a part of defragging your mind, because all of these things go toward the stress that is in your life. And this is kind of bringing everything in the past 2 episodes and this episode all around to one thing, that it all has to do with your mental health. It all has to do on how you look at the things around you and what's going on in your life internally, mentally. So sometimes it just needs to be, I need to simplify my mind. You have things you have to take care of. You have things that need to be done that should occupy your mind. Everybody does. It's called life. How do you defrag that? By not allowing all of these things that I've discussed in this and the last 2 episodes to harm you, to overwhelm you. Simplify your mind. It doesn't mean become an idiot. It doesn't mean to turn your back and turn your mind away from the important things in life. But what it means is to understand that you, like I said earlier, are one person. You are flesh. You're not a superhero. You're not a god. You are a flesh person. And that means while you may be able to multitask, and that may be needed that you multitask from time to time, life does not have to always be constant multitasking. When you multitask constantly, and it never stops, and you never simplify, things go undone. Things that need to get done either go undone or they don't get done to the best of your ability. When I die, I want to be known as the guy that completed his tasks and did everything with everything he had to the best of his ability. So I know that if I don't defrag the things around me, my life, if I don't simplify things so that I can focus on one thing at a time, I'm not going to be able to complete anything, whether it is a task, whatever it is, to the best of my ability. I gotta defrag my mind. So think about one thing at a time. Yeah, you've got a lot going on in your life. And I can't remember whether or not I mentioned this analogy before, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it now. It seems like when I was making notes, I might have written it down, but I don't know if I mentioned it. I know I didn't mention it in the last episode. I don't think I mentioned it in the first episode in this series. When I was selling insurance, I had a manager, and I've talked about him in the past, and he was very wise. And he had a lot of philosophical ideas that he shared with me that have stuck with me. And one of them is it's kind of all about the priorities thing when it comes to the things you need to get done. I was having a hard time when I was selling insurance getting everything done in the day that I needed to get done, because little things here and there would needle me, and I would find myself delayed because I was doing this one little thing here and this one little thing here and one little thing here, and the big stuff was not getting done. And he shared an analogy or a story about a professor in college that was trying to get it across to his students in a visual way how to fit everything that needs to be done into a day. And there are two ways you can go about trying to get stuff done. One is right and one is wrong. And he used this example. He came in and he brought a tray with two different sizes of gravel. He had tiny little bits of small gravel, and he had some big chunks of gravel like you would see in a driveway. So you've got small rocks and big rocks. And he brought a jar, one jar that was empty. And he asked if it was possible to get all the rocks in the jar. And they all decided they were going to take all the small rocks and go ahead and put the small rocks in the jar and then put the big rocks in on top. And so that's what they did. They emptied the tray of the small pieces of gravel, and then they tried to put the big pieces of gravel in, but they wouldn't all fit. They just couldn't get them all in there, and so the students decided it was impossible. So the professor dumped out the jar into the tray and said, "Watch." And he put the big rocks in the jar first. And all of the big rocks went in the jar. And then he started taking scoops of the small rocks and laying them in on top of the big rocks. And what happened was all of the small rocks fell to the bottom and started filling up around the big rocks and filling in the spaces and the gaps between the big rocks. And he was able to put all of the gravel into the jar and fit it in and shut a lid on it. He capped it off. And the idea is that if you do the small rocks first, the small things of your day that they all need to get done, but if you hit all the little stuff first, it's going to take time away from your day, little bits of time away from your day. And then you're going to try to get the big things in your day done, and it's not all going to fit in, and you're going to get frustrated. But if you take the big rocks, the most important parts of your day, and get them done first, then you can start filling in around it with all the little things. And even if your day ends before you were able to get all of the little things done, the things that were left out were still little things. The big stuff got done, and you have a sense of accomplishment. And most of the time what happens is, and he taught me this, and I found it to be true, that once I got the big things done, the little things kind of fell in place all around me. And before I knew it, I was capping off my day and everything was finished. It's such a vivid picture to me. It made so much sense. And then when I applied it to my life, and at the time to my selling insurance and getting everything done, it made all the difference in the world, and it gave me success. So when you are defragging your life, putting everything together into a puzzle that makes sense, something that you can see, it's not scattered pieces, do it by getting the big stuff done first. Then put the little things in. When I put a puzzle together, I have a way of doing it, and I think most people do this. When I'm putting a jigsaw puzzle together, I always find the edge pieces, and I create a framework around the puzzle, and then I start putting the other pieces in around that framework. So you can use that analogy as well. Create a framework for your day or your life, and then fill in with what needs to go where after you've made a framework. If you will take control of those things, you will find that your life is easier to handle, to live with. And although there are things that need to get done, you have a control over them. They make sense, and your life will run smoother and faster once you've defragged your life. So I hope this has been a help. I hope this series, this 3-part series, has been a help to you and hasn't bored you too much. It's been a help to me just doing it. So I'm hoping, I like to think when I'm trying to come up with a topic and things to talk about, that I like to think that you will be interested in them because they're things that interest me. And so if you're listening to this podcast, more than likely we have some similar interests anyway. So I'm hoping that because I've found value in working this stuff out and delivering it to you, that you'll find value in listening to it. And if you have, please share it with your friends and give me some comments and feedback on it, and I'll give you ways to do that at the end of the episode. My week has been kind of interesting. I had lost my wedding ring several weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and I've gotten used to not having a wedding ring on. And I didn't want to tell my wife about it. I don't know where I lost it. It's gone. It just slipped off my finger. I've been losing some weight, and I knew it was very loose on my finger, and I knew that might happen, and eventually it did. I thought it came out in my pocket and that maybe it dropped out somewhere. I'm not sure. Anyway, my wife had been talking about getting a new wrap for her engagement ring and a new wedding band anyway. We'd been talking about getting something with some Celtic design in it. Now that the money's a little better and we can... my wedding ring was kind of warped anyway from being around my finger. They were as basic as you could get because we didn't have any money when we first met and first got married, and things are a little better now. So we said after 20 years we want to redo our rings, and we'd been talking about it. And since I lost my ring, I said, honey, maybe this is the time for us to do that. So we did, and she ordered a beautiful thing that had she took the diamond she had and some diamonds that she had in another wrap and kind of put them all together. And I won't go into the details of the design of her ring, but anyway, then it was time for me to order my ring. And it came back, and I love it, but it's bigger and thicker. Now, it's cheaper. We didn't want to go with gold. We're not... I don't have to have the most expensive thing. I just want something that looks nice, that, does the job. And this is made out of titanium, and it's got Celtic knot grooves in it, and then pinstripe lines around the edges, and it's just a beautiful band. It almost looks like the ring from Mordor to me. Or not the ring from Mordor. Well, I guess it was the Lord of the Rings ring was forged in Mordor, I think, originally. Anyway, that's what it kind of looks like. But it's heavier and thicker, and titanium is cheaper than gold, but it's just a bigger, thicker ring, and it feels neat on my finger, but I'm having to get used to it. But I'm really excited to have it back. I'd gotten used to not wearing a wedding ring, and that bothered me. So now I've got my big, thick wedding ring that is obvious to people, and you can see that I am taken, which wasn't a problem before. I didn't have people bothering me about that or anything like that, but, as a married guy, I like to make sure that people can see that I have a beautiful wife who I love. I had thought at first when I was going to do it that I didn't necessarily want to match her design, that I wanted to do something different. And I thought about getting one of those rings made out of a quarter. In fact, I want to do some of that myself. I'm thinking about getting a little project-making tool kit that you can take and make rings and jewelry out of coins, and I love the process. I think it's really neat. And I thought about getting a quarter from 1995 made into a wedding ring. I looked online. You can get them for about $40-50, and I thought, hey, that's really cheap, and I can get that, and that will serve. But I decided I wanted to go a little bit more than that, and so I spent more than that on this, and it matches my wife's ring very well, and so it's an extremely nice piece to me of jewelry. I do think I'm going to get one of those 1995 quarter rings and wear it around my neck, because I'm afraid that what's going to happen with this, I've still got some pounds to lose, and I'm really kind of gung-ho now, and I'm back on track with it, and I'm afraid that this is going to get loose again, and I'm going to have it resized. So I want to have something else as well, and so I think I'm going to get one of those quarter rings to wear as a necklace around my neck. And also this week, I've spent some time on the road thinking, just letting the air around me, the sound of the road, be all I heard. And I've had some time for some deep thought, and I'm not going to tell you, I don't mean for this to be a teaser or anything, and I'm not going to tell you what the details are, but I just want to say and ask for your prayers in an enormous decision my wife and I have come to. If you're family and you're listening to this, no, we're not thinking about having another baby. My wife had her tubes tied anyway, so no, it's not that. But it is a huge, enormous decision in our lives that is going to happen on down the road. If we stay on course with this, it'll be a couple of years from now probably. But it's something that we've decided to get serious about, and it's a big move in our lives, a big change, and it's something that will affect us in a very deep way. And no, we're not getting a divorce. We love each other more and more every day. But just all I want to ask from the listeners, because I believe prayer works, if you're a prayer warrior, keep us in your prayers for this decision and ask that the Lord would lead us in the right ways and that we would follow His guidance and not necessarily our own hearts if it's not in alignment with His plan. And then I want to give my positive review for this week. And I've made some decisions as far as my positive review goes as well, because listening to back episodes, once I've started doing this positive review thing at the end of every episode, I've realized I've done some kind of trivial stuff. I'm not really proud of doing a positive review for Mountain Dew's Kickstart. It ended up being a commercial for Kickstart, and that's not really what I want to do. I'm okay with the podcasts and movie reviews and stuff like that, but I kind of threw that Kickstart review out there because I couldn't think of anything else. And so I said I need to make a list of really honest things that I can review and things that would be beneficial, really beneficial to my audience. Maybe works of fiction or movies they could go see and things like that. But also, if I come across products that I really like, that I think they would like as well, I'll review stuff like that. But something that you can apply to your life. And Mountain Dew Kickstart, whereas, yeah, you can apply that to your life if you want to, it's not really life-changing. So I want my positive reviews to be life-changing. And I know movies can be right on the edge of that, because most people don't get a life-changing thing from a movie, but at the same time, it might become your favorite movie. You just might really enjoy it and spend some time with your favorite person watching it or something like that. However, books and things like podcasts and blogs and things that can enrich your life, I really want to dive a little bit deeper into as far as my reviews go. And so I decided in this episode to do a review of the works of Jules Verne. I love Jules Verne. If you ask me who's my favorite classic author, I'm going to tell you immediately without a thought, Jules Verne. And I have a couple of reasons for that. He's the author of Around the World in 80 Days, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and The Journey to the Center of the Earth. These are early works of science fiction, but they're classic and they're well written. And that's one of the reasons I like them. They're well written, they're classics. They come from a time of authorship where being a wordsmith was an art. And being different was good. I'm a member of a couple of writers groups, and one of the things that I notice when people ask opinions and advice on the writers group is they'll tell you kind of what their genre is, and they'll tell you what they're writing about. And I see a different person every day, usually a young person, usually a teen, and I'm not saying anything bad about it. I really love the thought of teens and young people getting into writing. But 9 times out of 10, they say, I'm writing a book about a vampire. I'm writing a book about a war between vampires and werewolves. And there have been great works of fiction that have been written about that stuff. I'm not knocking that, but it's one of those things that they're writing about it because it's what they're liking to see, because they're seeing movies and reading books from other authors that are writing about it right now. It's a niche kind of thing, it's a fad kind of thing, and it kind of gets on my nerves when people when the idea isn't very original. And most of the time when they kind of give a synopsis of the plot, it's something you've seen over and over again. Jules Verne comes from a time when people, part of the art was setting themselves apart from everybody else. Their styles were different. The way they did their dialogue was different. The way they did their narrative, all of their prose, everything was different from each other. And there was a voice individually. I like Jules Verne because he has that, and he took care to form his words. It was an art form, but at the same time, it didn't overwhelm you with words. He's 180 degrees from Victor Hugo. I love trying to read works from Victor Hugo, and Gaston Leroux wrote The Phantom of the Opera, which I like more than Les Miserables. I have not been able to get through Les Miserables because Les Miserables is a Victor Hugo novel, and he's just the really thick novel and can take 2 pages to make one statement. The Count of Monte Cristo, very similar, just a lot of detail that takes a very long time to write out. Jules Verne is kind of the opposite of that. He artfully crafts his work, but he keeps the story moving. From the time you open it, he starts telling the story, and it moves forward without laboring itself and bogging down with a whole bunch of big, huge, heavy words and run-on sentences that last 2 or 3 pages long. And that's the main reason I like him. He gets that story told beautifully, but it keeps moving. Not necessarily quickly. He's not going to tell a story of something that happened in 2 years and 50 pages. His books are normal-sized books, but you just get that feeling of movement and flow with Jules Verne. And he's got the science fiction thing going too, which is interesting to me. I'm not a science fiction type person as far as reading books, but it's a mix of elegance and art and science fiction at the same time that really is appealing to me. And so if that's the type of thing you think you might be interested in and you would like to read more classics, pick up the works of Jules Verne. I can't remember anything but the 3 right now. I know there are more, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head other than A Journey to the Center of the Earth, Around the World in 80 Days, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But if those 3 right there will give you a little bit of time of reading if you'd like to pick up the works of Jules Verne. So that's this episode of Road Noise Life 1 Mile at a Time. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so via email at feedback@michaelblackston.com. You can also get in touch with me via the voicemail line at 706-408-7456. Hit me up on Facebook, like my page, Road Noise Podcast. You go to facebook.com/Road Noise Podcast. I have so much going on, it's hard for me to have a lot of activity, as far as stuff that I put on there, but I'm trying to get better at it. And so like the page, let me know what you think about the podcast, and be an integral part of the groups. And until next time, thank you for sitting alongside me in the passenger seat. Driving on my commute this morning, by the way, I'm headed to Oxford, Alabama. It's, as I wrap this up, 7:30 in the morning, so I'm about to hit Atlanta traffic, and I waited a little longer because I don't really have a time I've got to be there, and traffic's about to get real crunchy and nasty for me, but I was expecting that, so I'm not real worried about it. So, again, thanks for sitting alongside me as we learn to live life 1 mile at a time. I'm Mike Blackston. See you next episode. Thanks for listening.